She clasped the gold bracelet over the butterfly on her arm. Her hands did not shake. Allison Reed is 22, black, elegant. She lives quiet in a brownstone and answers to no one. Tonight she is meeting a man for dinner at Kang House, the marble restaurant that decides who matters in this city. The man is Kang Min-jae, 28, tall, silent. A black dragon coils up his neck into the collar of a charcoal three-piece suit. They call him the Quiet One. What Allison does not yet know is what he is. She arrives 8 minutes late in a pink ruched dress, bare shoulders, nude heels. Her name is on the reservation, Table 1. The hostess does not check the book. She looks Allison up and down. She lifts a silver pen and points it toward a side door. The staff entrance. Someone like you already knows that. The room hears it. Forks stop moving. Champagne sweats on ice at Table 1, and the man with the dragon on his neck is already watching from across the marble. Allison does not move toward the door. She lifts her chin. She says 4 words. But what happens in the next 60 seconds is going to break this restaurant open. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. Allison closed the gold bracelet over the butterfly on her arm and heard the clasp click twice before it held. The first click was wrong. She opened it, lined the hinge, tried again. The second time it caught. She let her wrist fall to her side and looked at herself in the long mirror, leaning against the brownstone wall. The pink dress had taken 3 hours to choose. She had tried on 4 others before this one, all of them folded now on the bed behind her, like discarded versions of the woman she almost went as. The ruched fabric hugged her waist and left her shoulders bare. The straps tied at the back and along her left arm in small knots she had practiced with her mother's help when she was 15. Her mother was not here to help tonight. Her mother had died in April. On the nightstand sat the reservation printout, folded once, and her phone, screen down. She had listened to the voice message 4 times already. She did not need to listen again to know the words. She listened again anyway. No security, no business. That's the rule of the house. Don't dress down. Come as you are. I want them to see you the way I see you. Kang House, Table 1, 8:30. She set the phone back on the nightstand and let it lie there like a small, warm animal she was afraid of waking. The voice belonged to Min-jae, Kang Min-jae, 28, quiet, careful with his hands, careful with his silences. She had known him for 4 months, and in those 4 months he had never once raised his voice, and in those 4 months she had learned that the quiet ones scared her more than the loud ones, because with the quiet ones, you never knew what the silence was hiding. Tonight, she suspected, the silence was going to break. She did not know yet what he was going to say. She only knew he had booked Table 1 and told her twice to wear something that did not apologize. The pink dress did not apologize. She turned to check the back in the mirror and caught the butterfly under the sleeve of gold. Fine lines. Her sister had drawn it on the back of a napkin the summer before senior year, and Allison had taken the napkin to a tattooist on 125th Street a week later. The tattooist had asked if she was sure. She was sure. The butterfly had one wing slightly larger than the other, because her sister could not draw symmetrical wings if her life had depended on it, and Allison had asked the tattooist to keep the flaw. Her sister was in Atlanta now, married, 2 kids. Allison had not told her sister about tonight. She had not told anyone about tonight. She sat down on the edge of the bed to fasten the nude heels, and the strap of the right heel slid twice through her fingers before she got the buckle to sit right. Her hands were steady, her fingers were not. She rehearsed the smile. She had been rehearsing it since she was 11. The smile she used at the bakery counter on Lenox when the customer looked past her and asked for the person in charge. The smile she used in the elevator at the design firm on 5th when the man from the 9th floor said, "You must be the new cleaning girl," and she said, "No, I'm the new junior architect," and he said, "Oh, sorry, honey," and stepped off at his floor without turning around. The smile at the hospital when the receptionist assumed she was there to pick up her mother instead of to sit at her bedside for 6 weeks. The smile at the funeral when the pastor's wife said, "Your mother was such a hard worker, God bless her," as if that were the only thing a black woman could be. The smile she had made her face memorize, so that the face could carry her through moments the rest of her body could not. She practiced it once in the mirror, then she practiced not needing it. That one was harder. She held her own gaze for a slow count of 10. On 4, her jaw tried to soften into the old shape. On 7, her chin tried to tuck. On 10, she made the chin stay where it was. Her mother used to sit her at the kitchen table on Saturdays, with a butter knife balanced on the crown of her head, and tell her to walk the length of the hallway without letting it fall. Allison had thought it was about posture. It had not been about posture. It had been about a woman teaching her daughter what a room would try to take from her, before the room even knew she had walked in. The knife was the room. The head was the head. You did not lower one for the other. The knife had fallen 100 times before it had stopped falling. The brownstone was quiet around her. She lived alone on the parlor floor, 3 rooms and a bay window that looked out onto a stretch of Convent Avenue where the trees had come back in bloom 2 weeks late this year. The kitchen light was still on down the hall. She had not eaten since noon. She would not eat now. She had made that mistake once, at a client dinner in her first year at the firm, and her stomach had betrayed her at the exact moment the senior partner asked her opinion. She had learned to arrive hungry and leave hungry and eat when she got home. Tonight, there would be no eating when she got home. Tonight, she did not know where she would be at midnight. She stood, smoothed the dress at the hip, and walked to the small vanity by the window to check her hair. The waves fell where they were supposed to fall, framed the face the way she had spent 40 minutes making them frame the face. Her lips were glossed, her eyes lined the way her mother had shown her at 15. The elongated flick at the outer corner that her mother said was the line a woman drew when she decided to stop asking permission. Her mother had said a lot of things like that. Allison used to roll her eyes at them. She wrote them down now, in a notebook she kept in the drawer of the vanity, so she would not forget the sound of a voice she would never hear again. She glanced at the printout. Kang House, 57th Street, Table 1. Table 1 was the marble table by the window. Everyone in the city who cared about that kind of thing knew that. Table 1 at Kang House was the table you did not book. Table 1 at Kang House was the table that got assigned, and Min Jae had booked it, which meant Min Jae was either someone very important or Min Jae was about to spend more money than a man in a bespoke suit should spend on a woman he had known for 4 months. She folded the printout in half and slipped it into the matte cream clutch. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She looked. The car was downstairs. She had told him she would take a taxi. He had sent a car anyway. That was the 3rd time this month. She was going to have to say something about it soon. Not tonight. Tonight she was going to walk into that restaurant on her own 2 feet and let the door open for her the way it opened for anyone else. She picked up the clutch. She stood at the door of the bedroom and made herself look back at the mirror once more. The woman in the mirror had her mother's eyes and her sister's jaw and a butterfly on her arm and a gold bracelet catching the lamp. The woman in the mirror was not asking permission tonight. "Okay," she said out loud, to the woman in the mirror. The woman in the mirror said nothing back. She locked the parlor door behind her, went down the stoop, and got into the car. The driver did not turn around. He said good evening. She said good evening. She sat in the middle of the back seat, with her clutch on her lap and her knees together, and watched the trees on Convent slide past the window in the last blue light of the evening. She thought about the first time Min Jae had walked her home. She thought about the way he had stopped at the bottom of the stoop and not asked to come up. had only tilted his head slightly and waited to see if she would offer, and when she had not offered, had smiled the small, quiet smile of a man who had never once in his life needed to be told no because he had learned to hear the word before it was spoken. He had said good night. He had waited at the curb until she was inside with the door locked. She had stood in the hallway with her back to the door, and her heart doing something she did not want to name. She thought about the second time, and the third, and the night at the little bar on 116th, where she had asked him what he did for a living, and he had looked at her for a long time before he said, "I take care of the family business," and she had waited, and he had not filled the silence. She had let him keep it. She had learned by then that pushing him only made the silence louder. Tonight the silence was going to speak. The car crossed onto the West Side Highway, and the river opened up on the right, and she felt the small tightening in her ribs that she got before every job interview, and every hospital visit, and every phone call she did not want to answer. She let the tightening sit. She did not fight it. Her mother had told her once that fear was a passenger. You did not throw the passenger out of the car. You drove with the passenger in the back seat, and you kept your eyes on the road. Her eyes were on the road. She thought, briefly, of turning the car around. She let herself think it the way you let yourself think of touching a hot pan, to prove to your hand that it will not. Then she set the thought down beside the clutch on her lap and did not pick it up again. She had canceled dinners before. She had canceled interviews before. She had canceled a wedding, once, 3 years ago, and she had learned in the weeks that followed that the thing she canceled was never the thing she was actually afraid of. The thing she was afraid of stayed. The thing she canceled only bought the fear a little more time. She was tired of buying the fear time. The car turned east at 57th and slowed a block before the restaurant, because the block was full of black cars idling, and men in dark coats standing near them, with their hands folded in front of them. She counted 6 cars. She counted 8 men. She did not count the men who were pretending not to be men. The driver pulled up to the awning. A doorman in a gray coat opened her door. She swung her legs out the way her mother had taught her to swing her legs out of a car, knees together and feet flat, and stand up in one smooth motion so the dress did not ride. The doorman did not offer his hand. She did not need it. She was 8 minutes late. She had planned to be 5 minutes late. The traffic on 57th had cost her 3. She stood on the sidewalk for a half breath and looked up at the sign. Kang House. 2 words in a clean serif carved into brass over the door. Below the sign, through the tall glass, she could see the room. She could see the low, warm light. She could see the marble table by the window, empty, laid for 2, and a champagne bucket beside it, with the neck of the bottle rising out of a cloud of chipped ice. Table 1. She could not see Min Jae. He must have been at the bar. She could see the woman at the reservation stand, blonde hair pulled tight into a low bun, black dress, black stilettos, silver pen tucked into a binder against her hip. The woman was looking down at the binder, and then up at the room, and then down at the binder again, in the small, watchful rhythm of someone who had run this floor for a long time. Allison took the last breath she was going to take on the sidewalk. She stepped forward. The doorman held the door. The warm air of the room came out to meet her, and with it the small sound of glassware and low conversation and a piano playing something she thought she recognized from a movie she had watched with her mother when she was 11. She walked in. The woman at the reservation stand looked up. The look was not a look. It was a calculation. It happened in the space of 1 second, and it happened in the woman's eyes before it happened in the woman's face, and Allison had been reading that calculation off the faces of white women in nice rooms since she was 6 years old and knew the shape of it before it had finished forming. The eyes did the arithmetic. The mouth waited for the answer. The answer arrived. The mouth moved. The woman set down the pen. She stepped out from behind the reservation stand and walked toward Allison, in a way that closed the distance faster than the distance needed to be closed. She stopped 3 feet away. She smiled. The smile was thin and quick, and it did not reach any part of her face above the mouth. She lifted a hand, and the hand indicated, with the small, polite gesture of someone giving directions to a stranger, a narrow door set into the wall on the far side of the coat check. "Someone like you," the woman said, quiet enough that only Allison could hear, "already knows to use that entrance." Allison did not move. She heard the piano. She heard a fork touch a plate at the table behind her. She heard, in some part of her that was not listening for it, the sound of a chair being pushed back somewhere at the far end of the room. She heard her own pulse in her ears. She did not move. The woman's hand was still raised. Allison looked at the door the hand was indicating. Small, painted the same color as the wall. A staff door. The kind of door that opened into a corridor, that opened into a kitchen, that opened onto an alley where the deliveries came in the morning. She looked at it long enough that the woman's hand began to lower, uncertain now, and then she looked back at the woman, and she let the smile she had rehearsed in the mirror come up onto her face. The smile she used when strangers assumed she was the help. She let it come up, and then she let it drop. Somewhere at the back of the room a chair scraped the marble floor. Somewhere at the back of the room a man was already on his feet. Allison did not turn to look. She looked at the woman. "I have a reservation," she said. The room, without meaning to, went a little quieter. The blonde woman's smile did not move. Her eyes did. Her eyes went past Allison's shoulder toward the middle of the room, and for the first time since Allison had walked through the door, the woman's face did something the woman had not decided to let it do. The eyes widened by a fraction, the mouth tightened by another, and Allison, standing in the pink dress with the gold bracelet catching the light and the folded printout still inside the clutch at her hip, understood that whatever was walking across the marble floor behind her was walking straight at them both. She did not turn. She kept her eyes on the woman. The woman's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Behind Allison, the piano kept playing. The footsteps stopped. 40 minutes earlier, Kang Min-jae stepped out of the black sedan on 57th Street and let the driver close the door behind him. He did not look up at the sign. He knew the sign. He had signed the check for the sign 11 months ago, in a room 3 floors above where he now stood, and the metal letters had been polished twice since. 8 men were already in position on the sidewalk. They did not greet him. That was the rule. On a public street, in front of the house, no one nodded. Only inside, only in the private rooms, did the family recognize the family. He walked past them the way a stranger walks past street lamps. The doorman opened the glass with a gloved hand. Warm air met him. Piano, low conversation, the smell of butter and something citrus from the kitchen pass. Vivienne Marchetti was already crossing the marble floor to meet him. She had the walk down. Chin 1 inch high, shoulders back, the reservation binder pressed to her chest like a hymnal. Her heels struck the marble in even beats. 3 steps out from him she slowed, dipped her head, and produced the smile she saved for names that made her career. "Mr. Kang, welcome home." He hated the phrase. He kept his face still. "Table 1, she said. "Champagne is already down. Would you prefer a different vintage tonight, sir? The house pick is fine." "Of course." She turned on the heel of her left stiletto and led him across the room. Every table he passed made the small correction diners make when they sense a man they should look at without looking. Napkins straightened. A conversation dropped half a tone. The bald man in the corner banquette lifted his water glass to his mouth and did not drink. Min-jae let it happen. He had spent 4 years learning to walk into rooms this way, and 4 more learning not to enjoy it. Tonight, he needed the room to see him seated first. He needed the seat to have already softened under him by the time she came through the door. That mattered for a reason he had not told anyone, and he was not going to start telling anyone now. Vivian stopped at the marble two-top by the window and drew back the far chair. "Sir." He sat with his back to the room. He never sat with his back to the room. Tonight he did. From this seat he could see the front door and the low brass rail that framed it. That was the seat he wanted. That was the whole point. The champagne stood in the ice bucket to his right, neck angled toward him, a folded white napkin over the cork, 2 flutes on the linen, a single low candle. The reservation card on the plate said the 2 words he had asked for and no more. Reed, Kang. He turned the card face down. Vivian noticed. She always noticed. That was why she still worked here. "Would you like me to remove it, sir?" "Leave it." "Of course." She poured half a finger of water into his goblet from a decanter she had produced from somewhere behind her hip. She was very good. That was the problem. He said, without looking up. "My guest is arriving at 8:30. "Yes, sir. I have her on the sheet." Something in his throat moved before the words did. He kept his voice at the same low register he used to close deals in Korean rooms, then repeated the sentence in English so there could be no misunderstanding later, when it mattered, when this woman would try to invent a version of events that let her keep her job. "When she arrives, you will greet her the way you greeted me." Vivian's smile did not change. Her eyes did. A quarter-second flicker, then gone. "Naturally, sir." The same words, the same tone. "Of course." "You will show her to this table. You will not ask her to wait. You will not ask her for identification. You will not ask her whether she has the correct reservation. Sir, you will call her Miss Reed." "Miss Reed." "Yes, sir." He set the water goblet down. It made no sound on the marble. That was the point of the 2-inch felt pad hidden under the linen. He had approved that pad. He had approved every small thing in this room, and he had done it precisely so no small thing would ever embarrass a guest of his. "Repeat it." Vivian blinked. Once, she was a woman who had never been asked to repeat an instruction inside her own house. "Repeat, sir?" "The greeting. What you will say when she walks through that door." For a moment, she did not speak. Her lips parted. The pearl studs in her ears caught the candle at the wrong angle and threw one small point of light onto the ceiling. Then she recovered, the professional collapsing back into place over the human. "Miss Reed, welcome home. Mr. Kang is expecting you at table 1. "Good." She held the reservation binder tighter to her chest. He watched her thumb whiten against the leather corner. He filed the observation and let it go, because tonight he had bigger things to hold on to than the color of a maitre d's knuckles. "Will that be all, sir?" "That will be all." She turned and left. The heels marked out the same even beats, but he heard, or thought he heard, a single half-beat off. That would have been the tell if he had chosen to hear it. He chose not to. He was already trying to think about the woman who was, at that moment, sitting in a car crossing the West Side Highway toward this door, and the 2 sentences he had rehearsed for after the dessert. The truth was going to be delivered over the small plate of pear, honey, and salt. He had thought about that for a week. He had thought about it while shaving, while signing off on the quarterly, while lying in the dark not sleeping. The pear went with the honey, the salt cut both. It was the only dish in this restaurant he had ever asked the chef to build for a single specific reason, and the reason was that he needed a plate on the table between them when he said the words. "I am the head of the family. This house is mine. I have lied to you for 4 months by not saying so." He picked up his water goblet again. He set it down. He noticed his own hand for the first time that evening. It was steady. The steel of his watch was steady. The onyx on his little finger was steady. His breath, when he checked it, was 1 full count slower than the piano, at the far end of the room. Terrified. He was terrified. She would either look at him with the same face she used when the door of her apartment closed behind them, and only he was in the room, or she would stand, retrieve the clutch from beside her plate, thank him for the meal, and walk out of the door he owned, and he would never see her again, in a room he had not paid for. Those were the two futures. He had counted them. He had counted them out loud in the car on the way here, in Korean, so the driver would not understand and would not have to arrange his face. The bald man in the corner banquette signaled for a second bottle. A woman at the foretop by the piano laughed too loud and covered her mouth. Somewhere in the kitchen, a plate scraped against another plate, once, and then the sound was gone. Min-jae reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket and touched the folded piece of paper that lived there. It had lived there for 6 days. It was the note the family solicitor had sent from Seoul, and it confirmed the last piece of the legal architecture he had been assembling since the winter. The paper would not be shown tonight. It was only there so he could touch it and know the ground was where he had left it. He let the paper go and put his hand back on the marble. Across the room, Vivienne had returned to the host stand. She was not looking at him. She was looking at her tablet. She was scrolling with 2 fingers, the way people scroll when they are searching for a specific line. Then her scrolling stopped. Her jaw set. He watched her for 8 seconds without seeming to watch. He had learned to do that in Busan when he was 19, from a man who was now dead. Watching without seeming to watch was, in his opinion, the most useful skill any adult could learn, and he had taught it to no one, because he did not want a second person in the world to be as tired as he was. Vivienne closed the tablet. She reopened it. She scrolled the same short distance again. Her lips moved once, a soundless word. Then she turned to the young man beside her, the junior host, the boy with the round glasses whose name Min-jae could not, for the moment, recall, and said something short. The boy looked at the tablet. The boy looked at Vivienne. The boy's shoulders lifted a small fraction and stayed lifted. Min-jae filed that too. He did not know yet what she had seen on the sheet. He did not know that she had, in the 4 minutes since leaving his table, quietly opened the reservation record, read the guest name typed beside his own, and made a decision. He did not know that the decision had already committed her, that a woman who had spent 11 years arranging seats for men like him had just, in her head, revised the seating of one specific guest to the side door of the coat check. He would learn it in 22 minutes. He would learn it standing up. For now, he did what he had come here to do. He waited. The sommelier drifted over, an old Frenchman with a small nose and no opinions. "May I open the bottle, Mr. Kang?" "Not until she is seated." "Of course." The sommelier retreated. Min-jae watched the doorway. It was 7 minutes past the hour of 8. He had told her 8:30 because he wanted her to arrive at 8:30 and no earlier. He knew she was often 5 minutes late on purpose, and he had counted that into the reservation. She would come through the door somewhere between 8:33 and 8:38. That gave him 26 minutes with himself in the seat. He used the first 6 of those minutes to think about her mother. He had never met the woman. She had died in April. He had heard about the death 2 weeks after, in bed, from Allison, in a voice that had not once cracked. He had asked her, that night, whether she wanted him to come to Atlanta with her for the second service. She had said no. She had said, "I want you to be a room I come back to." He had not understood the sentence then. He was beginning to understand it now. He used the next 4 minutes to think about the first night. She had let him drive her home from a gallery on 1/16. She had not asked him up. He had not asked to be asked up. They had stood on the stoop of her brownstone and she had said, "I don't know what you do and I'm not asking tonight." And he had said, "Good," and she had gone inside. He used the 2 minutes after that to think about the mistake he had almost made 3 days ago, when he had opened his mouth to tell her over coffee, and had closed it again because the coffee was too small a table for what he needed to say. He had wanted her to hear it in a room that was his. He had wanted her to feel the weight of the room before she felt the weight of the word. He used the remaining minutes to think about nothing at all. That was the hardest part. At 8:21, the bald man in the corner banquette rose from his table and made his way across the marble to shake Min Jae's hand. Min Jae rose to meet him. The handshake was brief. The bald man was someone whose company managed shipping between Incheon and Long Beach, and he had drunk 2 glasses too many, and he wanted very much to be seen shaking the hand of the man everyone in the room suspected owned this floor. "Kang," the bald man said, low, in Korean. "Good to see you out." "Ha," Min Jae answered. "Business or pleasure?" "Pleasure." The bald man's eyebrows moved. He looked at the second flute across the table. He did not ask. "Pleasure," he repeated. "Then I will not linger. My regards." He returned to his banquette. Min Jae sat back down. The exchange had taken 11 seconds. The room had watched every one of those 11 seconds without turning its head. At 8:26, the front door opened and a couple in matching camel coats came in. Not her. His pulse noticed anyway. He rearranged the flute stem by a quarter turn and set his hand flat on the marble. At 8:29, the front door opened and a party of 6 came in. Not her. He watched Vivian greet them, ferry them to the round 8-top by the back wall, distribute menus with the same economical grace she had used for him, and he thought, she is very good at her job. At 8:30, the front door did not open. At 8:32, the front door did not open. At 8:33, a black sedan pulled up to the curb outside, and through the glass he saw a figure in pink step onto the sidewalk, close the door with her hip, and take one long breath before crossing to the entrance. He could not see her face from here. He did not need to. He set both hands on the marble. The door opened. She came in. He was, as he had known he would be, unprepared for it. The way she had angled her chin was the way her mother had, apparently, angled her mother's chin, and he had never met her mother, so the recognition was theoretical, but the theory sat in his chest like a stone. Her hand tightened once on the small pale clutch and released. Her heel made the softest possible sound on the marble. She scanned the room without appearing to scan it. She had learned that from someone. Him, possibly. Herself, more likely. She did not see him yet. He was seated with his back to the room by design. She was looking for the host stand, and the host stand was where Vivian had risen from her chair, tablet abandoned, mouth already moving. He saw Vivian take 3 steps out from behind the stand, toward Allison. He watched her chin lift. He watched her right hand come up in a small pointing gesture, discreet, downward angled, indicating something to her side. He read the geometry of the gesture. He read where the gesture pointed. He read the position of the side door of the coat check relative to that gesture. His hand stopped moving on the marble. For one full breath he did not do anything. Not because he was frozen, because he was choosing. He had one arc available to him. Rise now, cross the room, take her hand, and end this without her ever having to say a word. He had a second arc. Sit, wait, let her act, and see who she was in the moment before she knew he was in the room. The second arc was harder. The second arc was also, he understood, the only one that answered a question he had been afraid to ask for 4 months. He waited. He watched her mouth open and close. He watched Vivian lean an inch closer and say something quiet that he could not hear from this distance. He watched Allison's face do the thing he had never seen her face do in his presence. It did not flinch, and it did not soften, and it did not smile the smile she had once described to him, in bed, as the one she used at the pharmacy counter. She let a small smile appear and then let it fall. On purpose. He saw the purpose. He rose. The chair moved back a quarter inch on the marble, silent under the felt pad he had approved. His hand pushed against the table for the small leverage a man his height needed to stand cleanly from a low seat. He felt the piano, briefly, in his sternum. He heard the foretop by the wall drop half a tone, then a full tone, then to something that was not quite silence. He began to walk. He did not walk fast. He walked at exactly the pace he walked when he crossed his own study to answer his own phone. 10 paces to her. He counted them. His shoes made almost no sound on the stone. At 3 paces out, she said, clearly, into Vivian's face, "I have a reservation." The room stilled another degree. At 2 paces out, he was near enough to smell the perfume she wore on nights she was nervous. The one she thought he had not noticed she saved for him. He noticed everything. He had always noticed everything. That was the disease of his job. At 1 pace out, he stopped behind her right shoulder. He did not touch her. He did not speak. He waited for Vivian's eyes to lift over Allison's shoulder and find his own, because he wanted the woman who had just tried to send his guest to the servant's door to understand, in silence, before any word passed between them, what she had done and to whom she had done it. Vivian's mouth opened. No sound came. Behind Allison, the piano kept playing. Min-jae stood 1 full pace behind her, and inside the perfect suit and the perfect posture and the perfect stillness, the part of him that had rehearsed a confession over pear and honey and salt was quietly, cleanly, unmistakably folding itself in half. The confession would still happen tonight. He knew that in the second his eyes locked with Vivian's, it just was not going to happen the way he had spent a week rehearsing. It was going to happen now. Vivian's mouth moved before her voice caught up. A vowel, half-formed, dropped between her teeth and died. Her eyes stayed on the man behind Allison's shoulder. Allison felt the shift before she understood it. The air behind her had weight now. A body. A silence with edges. She kept her chin where it was and watched Vivian's face fall through 3 expressions in under a second. Surprise. Recognition. Something colder underneath. The kind of cold that only arrives when a person understands they have already lost. "Miss Reed." The voice came from just behind her right ear, low enough that only the closest 2 tables could catch the shape of it. Allison turned her head a 1/4 inch. She did not turn her body. Not yet. "Mr. Kang." She said it the way she would say his name in the doorway of her own apartment. Calm, unhurried, as if the marble around them were her kitchen tile. Vivian's pen slid an inch across the leather binder and stopped. Her hand made no move to catch it. The silver caught the chandelier and threw a bright small coin of light onto the reservation card she had been trying to hide with her wrist. Min-jae stepped around Allison in a single fluid motion. He did not brush her arm. He did not take her elbow. He came to stand at her side, close enough that the fabric of his sleeve nearly touched the ruched pink of her shoulder, and he faced Vivian with the flat, unreadable expression that made men who had known him for years suddenly recalibrate what they were about to say. "I believe," he said, "you were showing my guest to her table." 4 tables away, a fork paused above a plate. The party of 6 at the round 8 top had gone quiet in the middle of a story about Sardinia. The bald man at the corner banquette set his water glass down without a sound. Vivian's mouth opened. "Mr. Kang, there must have been a table 1. 2 words. He said them the way another man might close a door." Vivian's throat worked. She looked at the binder in her hand as if she had never seen it before. She looked at the side door of the coat check, where she had been directing Allison 30 seconds earlier, and something behind her eyes made a small, ugly calculation. She was already picking through the story she would tell later, already drafting the misunderstanding. "Of course," she said. "This way, please." She turned. Her heel caught, half a beat, on the seam of the marble, and she corrected it. Before the room could register the stumble, Allison saw it. Min-jae saw it. The bald man at the banquette saw it, and looked down at his bread plate. Allison did not step forward. She let Vivian take 3 steps toward table 1 alone, so that anyone watching would see the shape of it clearly. The maître had turned her back on a guest she had been trying to send to the servants' entrance, and the guest was still standing where she had been left. Then Min-jae offered his arm. He did not speak. He raised his left arm from his side, elbow angled toward her, palm loose, the black wool of his sleeve steady as a shelf. It was the gesture of a man escorting his mother into a church. It was the gesture of a man escorting his wife into a room full of enemies. It was, most importantly, a gesture the room could not misread. Allison slid her hand through the crook of his elbow. She felt the tension in his forearm and then, a second later, the small, deliberate relaxing of it under her fingers. They walked. 10 paces. She counted them the way she had counted paces in high school hallways when she needed a rhythm to keep her breath even. 1, 2, past the banquette. 3, 4, past the round 8 top, where a woman in champagne silk turned her whole head to follow them and did not care that she was seen doing it. 5, 6, past the pillar of pale onyx that split the sightline of the room. 7. A cellist she had not noticed before lifted her bow and set it back down without playing. 8, 9. Past the sommelier, who inclined his head a fraction of a degree, the same small bow he had given Min-jae 40 minutes ago. 10. Table 1, marble edge, pale linen, 2 settings, close, angled so that the diners would face each other rather than the room. The champagne slept in its bucket of shaved ice. The reservation card lay face down where Min-jae had turned it earlier. Allison did not know he had turned it. She only saw a small folded rectangle of cream stock and thought, briefly, that it looked like a name tag someone had forgotten to wear. Min-jae released her arm. He moved behind her chair and drew it out. Not the perfunctory pull a waiter gives. 1 inch, 2 inches, enough for a woman to sit. He drew it fully back, angled it, held it steady with both hands on the top rail so that all she had to do was step in and lower herself. She did. He pushed the chair in with the small, controlled motion of a man who had done this exactly this way for someone before. She did not ask herself for whom. She would ask later. Right now she had a room to survive. He sat opposite her. He unfolded his napkin. He did not look at Vivian, who had stopped 4 feet from the table and was now waiting with the leather binder pressed against her ribs, unsure whether to approach or retreat. "Champagne," he said, without lifting his eyes to her, "for the lady, then leave the bottle and go." Vivian moved. The sommelier was already there, appearing at the table side the way sommeliers do in rooms like this. Without seeming to have walked, the cork left the bottle with a small, polite sigh. He poured for Allison first, a thin, honey-colored ribbon that broke into fine beads against the crystal. He poured for Min-jae. He set the bottle in the ice. He inclined his head and withdrew. Vivian remained. She was 2 steps back now, the binder still against her ribs, and her lips had gone the color of the underside of her wrist. She was waiting for a cue. She was waiting for permission to leave, or the instruction that would send her deeper into the pit she had dug in the last 90 seconds. Min-jae took a slow sip. He set the glass down. He looked at Allison. "Are you cold?" His voice had changed. The registry had dropped. This was the voice she knew from the stoop of the brownstone on the 116th, from the kitchen at 2 in the morning when he stood at her counter slicing pears with a knife he had brought from his own drawer. This was the private voice. He was using it in front of 84 people on purpose. "No," she said. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." He nodded once. Then, without turning his head, without raising his voice, he spoke a single sentence into the air between them, and the sentence was for Vivian, and Vivian knew it. "You may go." Vivian went. Her heels struck the marble in perfect quarter time until she reached the host stand, where she set the binder down with the care of a woman placing a child in a crib. She did not look up. She placed both hands on the edge of the stand and stood there, breathing through her nose. Behind her, Elias Park had not moved for a full minute. He was 23. He had worked at Kang House for 4 months. He had earned the job because his aunt had sold Vivienne a co-op in Fort Greene at a price Vivienne could brag about at Christmas, and because Elias had scored perfectly on the wine list Vivienne had made him memorize before his interview. He wore the plain black jacket of a junior host. His earpiece was coiled to the collar. His round wire frames slid down his nose in the small heat of the front-of-house lamp, and he pushed them up with a knuckle. He had watched everything. He had watched Vivienne lift her pen toward the side door. He had watched her mouth the word that she was now already telling herself she had not said. He had watched the man at table 1, whom she called Mr. Kang, and whom the 8 men on the sidewalk called something else in Korean, cross the room in silence and stand behind the woman in the pink dress. He had watched the woman in the pink dress hold her ground. His phone was in his left pants pocket. It had been recording since Vivienne had come back to the stand 2 minutes ago, muttering, and told him under her breath that there had been an error in the system and she was going to reseat the walk-in at the bar. The word walk-in had made Elias's ears warm. He had watched her scroll through the reservation list on the tablet, and he had seen her fingertip hover over one name in particular. He had seen her thumb move as if she were trying to delete it, then draw back. He had pressed record. Now he opened the leather binder Vivienne had set down. He turned it toward himself with the careful economy of someone who had grown up in a house where nothing was ever moved without a reason. He looked at the reservation card for table 1. He read it twice. Read, Allison, guest of Mr. Kang Min-jae. Table 1, 2030. Treat as principal. He looked at the small pen scratches in the upper right corner of the card, where a silver nib had been dragged, once, then again, across the surname Reed. Not enough to cut through, enough that someone would later be able to say the ink had smudged, enough that a name could disappear from a printed list if it needed to. Elias closed the binder. He slid it 2 inches back to the exact position Vivienne had left it in. He did not touch the pen. He looked up. Across the marble, at table 1, Min-jae was lifting his glass toward Allison. Allison was lifting hers. The 2 crystals met at the exact center of the table, with the small clear note of a bell in an empty church. Elias took his phone out of his pocket, angled it into the shadow of the stand, and let it keep recording. At table 1, Allison set her glass down and looked at Min-jae for the first time, without the room being between them. You knew she was going to do that. It was not a question. Min-jae did not answer for a beat. He turned his glass by the stem, 1/4 turn, then a 1/4 turn back. No, he said. I hoped she would not. But you knew it was possible. Yes. Allison held his gaze. Her hands were folded in her lap the way her mother had taught her to fold them at 10 years old, on the day of her grandfather's funeral, when a stranger had told her she looked like a good little girl in her Sunday clothes. She could feel the fabric of the pink dress under her palms, and the slight give of the ruched folds, and the small hard shape of her wedding band, that never was, in the inside pocket of the clutch on the seat beside her. And she thought, with the quick clarity that arrived when she had been humiliated in public, that she should be shaking. She was not shaking. Why did you bring me here, then? To see you sit in that chair. He said it plainly. He did not decorate it. She let the sentence sit for a moment. She weighed it. She turned it over, the way she had turned her mother's wedding ring over in her fingers, 3 days after the funeral, looking for the small inscription on the inside. That's not the whole answer. No, he said. It isn't. The sommelier drifted past their table, on his way to the round 8 top. He did not stop. Somewhere above them, the piano returned. 1 soft chord, then a second, feeling its way back into a room that had briefly forgotten it was there. The party of 6 pretended to laugh at something the man at the head of the table had said. The woman in champagne silk pretended not to be watching. I have something to tell you, Min-jae said. I meant to tell you over dessert. Allison did not move. Her hand stayed on the stem of her glass. Then tell me over dessert. I don't think that's how tonight is going to go. He glanced, once, past her shoulder. Not at Vivienne. Past her. At the front door, where a black town car had just pulled up to the curb, and where an older man with silver hair and a burgundy pocket square was, unhurriedly, unfolding himself from the back seat. Allison saw the change in Min-jae's eyes and turned her head a fraction. Through the tall front window she caught the silhouette, tall, upright, an oxblood leather portfolio held under one arm, the way a priest holds a psalter. She did not know the face. She knew the portfolio. She had seen that portfolio once before, in her mother's kitchen in April, 4 days before her mother died, when a lawyer she had never met sat at the small round table by the window and told her mother that certain arrangements would be finalized within the calendar year. Her hand tightened on the glass. Min-jae. Yes. Who is that man? Min-jae looked at her. He set his own glass down. He said, in the private voice, "He came for you." Across the room, Vivienne lifted her head from where she had been staring down at the host stand. She saw the silver-haired man at the door. Her hand went to the small gold name pin over her chest, without her thinking about it, and adjusted it a quarter turn. The doorman held the door. Theodore Ashford stepped into the light of the chandelier, and every angle in the room subtly reoriented itself around him, the way a compass finds north whether or not the person carrying it wants to go that way. He did not look at Vivienne. He did not look at the host stand. He did not look at the party of 6 or at the couple in the camel coats or at the bald man at the corner banquette. His eyes crossed the marble and found the pink dress at table 1 and stayed there, only there. Allison's mouth went dry. She had spent the last 4 months preparing herself to walk into this room and be seen for the first time by the 84 strangers her lover had chosen not to warn her about. She had prepared herself for the way Vivienne would look at her. She had rehearsed the small, unbreakable smile in her bathroom mirror 3 hours earlier. She had made herself count paces so her heart would not run away with her. She had not prepared herself for the way an old black man in a midnight navy suit would walk into the Kang house at 8:40 on a Thursday night and look at her the way her father had looked at her at her 6th grade recital and say her name, from 20 feet away, as if he had been holding it in his mouth for years. Miss Reed. The room heard it. The room heard the small formal weight he put on the second word. The room saw the pink dress rise, half an inch from the chair, then settle again, as Min-jae, without looking, laid 2 fingers against the linen just beside her wrist. Not yet. Allison stayed seated. She kept her hand on the glass. She watched the man come. She watched Vivienne shrink 2 inches into her stilettos as he passed her without a glance. She watched Elias tilt the phone in the shadow of the stand and hold it still. Theodore Ashford stopped 1 foot from table 1. He inclined his head at Min-jae. 1 small, precise bow, the courtesy of a man who has done business in Seoul and knows what the bow costs and what it buys. Min-jae returned it, the same fraction of an inch, no more. Then Ashford turned to Allison, and he did not bow. He set the oxblood portfolio, gently, on the corner of table 1, just beyond the champagne bucket. The embossed letters caught the light, A and V. Below them, in smaller script, the words she had seen once before, on the cover of a folder her mother had slid into a drawer and closed with the small, deliberate click that had told a 10-year-old Allison never to ask. "Forgive the timing," Ashford said. His voice was soft. It did not need to be loud, but some things cannot wait until Monday. He looked once, quickly, at Vivienne across the room. His face did not change, but something in the set of his shoulders shifted, and Allison, watching him, understood without being told that this man had already been briefed. Someone had told him, before he stepped out of the town car, what had happened in this room 5 minutes ago. He looked back at Allison. "Your mother," he said, "left instructions." The piano finished the phrase it had begun. The cellist did not lift her bow again. The room held its breath the way a room does when it senses, without knowing why, that the ordinary evening has just tilted onto its side, and something is about to slide off the table. Allison set the glass down. She placed both hands flat on the linen. She looked at Theodore Ashford. She looked at Min-jae. She looked, once, across the marble at Vivienne, who was still holding on to the edge of the host stand as if it were the rail of a ship. She said, quietly, so that only the three of them at table 1 could hear it, "Then let's hear the instructions." Ashford took the moment before he spoke. He set the oxblood portfolio flat on the linen, aligned it to the edge of the table with the pad of his thumb, and unzipped it in one clean line. The zipper opened without a sound. He removed a single folder, closed the portfolio again, and rested his hand on the folder, as if the paper inside could bruise. "I'll keep this short," he said. "You can read the full binding later." Allison kept her hands on the linen where he could see them. The champagne breathed in her glass, and no one drank. Min-jae hadn't moved. His 2 fingers stayed at the edge of her wrist, not touching, marking a line she was welcome to cross whenever she chose to. He watched Ashford's mouth, not his eyes. "Your mother spent the last 18 months of her life buying a floor," Ashford said. "Then she bought the floor above it. Then she bought the building next to that one. By March, she had used those 3 positions as leverage to acquire a controlling stake in the hospitality group that operates 6 restaurants in this city and 11 in 3 others." He waited. He was old enough to know that a sentence like that has to land before the next one is worth anything. "A&V Hospitality," he said. "Ashford and Vanderpoel. The initials on the portfolio. The House Council is my firm. The controlling stake is now yours." Allison did not turn her head. She looked at the folder. The folder had her name printed on the tab in black ink. Neat. All caps. "Read, A." "Which restaurants?" she said. Ashford named them one by one. He did not rush. When he reached the 4th name, Min-jae's fingers slid half an inch back from her wrist. When he reached the 6th, Min-jae inhaled once through the nose. The 6th name was Kang House. Ashford didn't stop for effect. He named the 7th and the 8th and continued down the list. He was giving Allison something rarer than drama, information delivered plainly enough to be believed. Allison heard Kang House and did not blink. Her mother had chosen this room. Her mother had bought this room. Her mother had died 4 months later. "When?" Allison asked. "When did she take the stake in this one?" "February 3rd, Ashford said. "The escrow closed at 11 in the morning. She signed at our office on Madison. She had coffee afterward with me. She ordered it black. She was already unwell then." Allison lifted her champagne glass. She didn't drink. She turned it a quarter of a turn on its base and set it down again, exactly where it had been. Min-jae spoke for the first time since Ashford had entered. He kept his voice at the register, only their table could hear. "You didn't know," he said to her. Not a question. "I didn't know," Allison answered. "I didn't know either," Min-jae said. Ashford looked between them once and understood the room he had walked into a second time. He set the folder in front of Allison and stepped back a single pace. "Miss Reed," he said, "you are the controlling owner of the parent group that owns this restaurant, as of 11 a.m., February 3rd. Vivienne heard none of it from the host stand. She saw the folder move across the linen, and she saw the older black man in a navy suit not bow to her guest. She saw Allison lift the glass and set it back down without drinking. She read the choreography and understood that something had shifted in a way she could not yet name. She turned her face a degree toward Elias. Elias did not look back. Elias was watching the folder in his phone screen, held flat against the reservation binder, framed cleanly, sound climbing over the piano and reaching the microphone. He tilted the phone a hair to catch the line where Ashford's hand had come to rest. At table 1, Allison put her palm on the folder. She didn't open it. "Teddy," she said. Ashford waited. "Sit down," she said. Ashford drew the chair between them, adjusted the crease of his trousers, and sat. He kept his portfolio on his knees. "Was she planning to tell me?" Allison asked. "On your 23rd birthday," Ashford said. "That was the date the instrument named. She wrote it herself. October. Allison's 23rd birthday was in 3 weeks." She looked at the champagne. She looked at Min-jae. She looked past Min-jae to the room, and only then did she register the shape of the room again. The 84 strangers pretending to eat. The cello note held 1 beat too long. The maitre at the host stand with both hands on the wood. Min-jae saw her look and understood what she was doing. She was mapping. She was matching what she had just been told against every surface she could see, every chair, every plate, every uniform. "Kang House," she said quietly. "How much of it?" "All of it," Ashford said, "wholly held under the parent." "And the parent." 51%, Reed Trust, under your name from the 3rd of February. Voting rights passed to you personally on your birthday. Until then, I hold them as fiduciary. If you want them tonight, that transfer is 1 signature. Allison looked at Min-jae. Min-jae had not moved his face, but the muscle at his jaw had softened, and his hand had come to rest flat on the linen, palm down, the onyx signet catching the pendant light. "You knew about A and V," she said to him. It was almost a question. "I knew the parent group changed hands in February," Min-jae said. "I knew the buyer was new. I was told the name last week, Reed. I didn't know Reed was you. You didn't ask." "I was going to ask over dessert." Allison almost laughed. It came out as a single short breath through her nose and stopped there. "Over the pear," she said. Min-jae inclined his head 1 degree. Ashford watched them and said nothing. He had spent 40 years watching families discover themselves at tables, and he knew when a lawyer's usefulness ended for a minute. Allison opened the folder. She read the first line. She read the second. She turned 3 pages. Her mother's signature was on the 4th. She recognized the loop of the R and the way her mother crossed the second E of Reed with a small upward flick. A habit from a checkbook Allison had watched her sign 100 times at the kitchen table on Convent Avenue. She closed the folder. "Teddy," she said, "how much of what happened tonight was on your desk before you walked in?" "I was called at 7:40, Ashford said, by a member of Mr. Kang's staff. The message was that a guest of Mr. Kang was being redirected to the service entrance. My car was 3 blocks away. I made a phone call from the car." "To whom?" "To the General Counsel of A and V. She confirmed that as of February 3rd, the restaurant's employment policies fall under a code we drafted in April. She also confirmed the code has not been posted or enforced by house management since then." Allison's eyes moved to the host stand without turning her head. Vivian's hands were still on the wood. Vivian felt the look and did not know it had been a look at all. Who was supposed to enforce it? Allison said. "The floor manager, a Mr. Halloran." "Where is Mr. Halloran tonight?" "He is not in the building." Min-jae's mouth tightened at the name Halloran. He had heard the name before, twice, in months where 2 women who worked front of house had quit inside the same week. He had asked Vivian about it, and Vivian had said staffing. He had let it pass because he had told himself the house ran itself, and because he had wanted, on nights like this one, to be a man at a table, and not a man who owned a table. He looked at Allison and understood that both of those choices had been wrong in the same direction. "Allison," he said, very quiet, "I have something to tell you." "I know," she said. "You know what?" I know some of it, she said. Tell me the rest. Min-jae took a breath. He had rehearsed the sentence in a hallway 3 floors above this room. He had rehearsed it in a kitchen in Seoul in the winter. He had rehearsed it on the West Side Highway in the back of a sedan the night after the coffee shop that had been too small a table. Tonight it came out smaller than he had ever practiced it. I am the head of the Kang family, he said. This restaurant is mine. Or it was until February 3rd. I only found out this week that I was working for someone new. Allison held his eyes. She did not look away. Say the other part, she said. Min-jae hesitated. The part about why I wasn't allowed to see the guest list, she said. The part about who signs your paychecks now. I sign them, Min-jae said. Until Ashford tells me I don't. Ashford said, without looking up. I will not tell you that. You continue in your role. Under whose authority? Min-jae said. Hers, Ashford said. Min-jae looked at Allison. Allison put her hand flat next to his hand on the linen. She did not touch him. The 2 hands were parallel, with an inch of white between them. So, this is the part where the story turns, she said. Yes, Min-jae said. Good, she said. She looked at the folder. She looked at the champagne. She looked once more at the door Vivian had pointed to when she arrived, the discreet slab in the paneling by the coat check, the door for staff and deliveries, and people someone had decided to put through it. It was still there. It had a small brass push plate at hand height. There was a slight scuff on the plate. Allison exhaled through her nose. The exhale was slow. It emptied more than it should have. Teddy, she said, I need 3 things right now, before I read a word of this folder. Ashford opened a small silver pen from his inside pocket and turned to a fresh page in his own binder. He did not write yet. 1, Allison said. I want the tablet at the host stand, the one Miss Marchetti used tonight. Chain of custody, Ashford said. Done. I'll have someone at the stand in 3 minutes. 2, she said. I want the reservation card, and I want the copy that was in the system before Miss Marchetti touched it tonight. System backup exists, Ashford said. I'll pull it in the morning. The physical card is in the binder at the stand. I'll take it into evidence tonight. 3. She looked at Min-jae. I want the head of house here at table 1. Before I say anything more. Standing, not sitting. Ashford nodded once. He did not move. Min-jae understood he had just been given his last request as an owner alone in his own house. He also understood he had been asked for something else at the same time, something not written in the folder. He was being asked whether he would carry an order from her before he had even heard what the order was. He set his hand on the linen an inch closer to hers. Vivienne, he said, not loud, but shaped so it carried across the marble, the way his voice had been trained to carry when he wanted a room to feel it. The maitre raised her head at the host stand. Her lips parted. She stepped out from behind the wood, as if the wood had let go of her. She crossed half the room and stopped at the edge of table 1 without being invited. She did not look at Allison first. She looked at Min-jae, and the look was old, the look of 11 years. The look of someone who had learned the rhythm of a boss and now had to unlearn it inside a single evening. She waited for his cue. Look at Miss Reed, Min-jae said. Vivian looked at Allison. Allison did not stand. She kept her hands where they were, folder closed under her right palm, champagne untouched at her right elbow. She let 2 seconds pass. Miss Marchetti, she said, do you know who I am? Vivian's throat moved. Miss Reed, she said. I'm sorry, there was a confusion. I did not know. Do you know who I am? Allison said. Vivian stopped. She understood the sentence was not asking for an apology yet. It was asking for a name. You are Mr. Kang's guest, Vivian said carefully. That is a fact from 7 minutes ago, Allison said. Try again. Vivian's mouth opened, and this time no sound came at all. Min-jae watched her stand there and understood, distantly, that he was watching a woman who had worked for him for 11 years lose the ability to speak in the room she had run for that long. He did not feel sorry. He noted the fact and set it aside. Ashford stepped forward 1/2 pace, folder in hand, and spoke into the small quiet. "Miss Marchetti," he said, "Miss Reed is the majority owner of the group that owns this restaurant. Since February, since before you touched the reservation card tonight." Vivian's face did the thing faces do when a floor has just been removed from under them and the body has to decide, in one breath, whether to fall or to hold. Her right hand went to the pen at her uniform. She closed her fingers around it. The pen was a small object in her fist, and she held it as if it were the last piece of the room that still knew her name. At the host stand, Elias had let the phone tilt 1/2 inch further. The frame now caught Vivian's face, Ashford's shoulder, and Allison's calm right hand on top of the folder that carried her mother's signature. Somewhere in the middle of the room, a party of 6 had stopped pretending to eat. A woman in a champagne dress had turned her chair. A man in a gray sport coat had put down his fork. The bald man from the corner banquette folded his napkin twice and set it on his plate. Allison did not raise her voice. She did not lean forward. She did not do anything with her body that a camera would have called a gesture. "You told me to enter through the servant's door," she said, "because you judged my skin." Vivian's fingers tightened on the pen. "You did that in front of 84 people, Allison said. Now those 84 people are going to see the rest of the evening. So am I. So is Mr. Kang. So is Mr. Kang. So is Mr. Kang. And so is the young man at your host stand who has been recording for the last 9 minutes. Vivian turned her head, without meaning to, toward the host stand. Elias did not lower the phone. He held her eye through the camera and did not blink. Allison did not turn. "You are going to stand exactly where you are," she said. "You are not going to speak. You are going to listen to me finish. And when I am done, you are going to answer a question I have not asked you yet." Vivian did not move. The room, which had been faking a dinner service, stopped faking. 2 servers at the pass halted with plates in their hands. The cellist did not lift the bow. The piano finished a phrase and did not begin another. Allison lifted her right hand off the folder. She placed both palms flat on the linen, fingers spread, the way her mother had once taught her to place her hands on a table when she needed a room to know she was not going anywhere. "Now," she said, "before I ask, I want you to answer for yourself, not for the house, not for Mr. Halloran. For you." Min-jae's gaze moved once, quickly, to Ashford. Ashford was already writing. Allison drew a breath that was slower than the last one. "Miss Marchetti," she said, "why did you point at that door?" Vivian's mouth opened and closed once. The silver pen twitched inside her fist. 84 people watched her from the corners of their eyes and pretended to watch their plates. "Miss Reed," she began. "No." Allison kept her palms flat on the linen. "Not to me first. To the room. You pointed in front of the room. You answer in front of the room." Ashford tilted his head 1/2 inch. He wrote 1 line and closed the binder. Vivian turned her body toward the sala. The heels she had marched in for 11 years betrayed her by a 1/4 inch. She caught herself. She looked at the couple in camel coats, at the party of 6, at the bald man from Incheon Shipping, at the sommelier who had gone still by the pass. None of them looked back at her fully. They looked at the empty space next to her face, which was worse. "I pointed at that door," she said, "because I saw you come through the main door, and I decided you did not belong at the main door." The party of 6 inhaled together, one small sound like a page turning. "Say the reason," Allison said. Vivian's jaw worked. "Miss Reed, say the reason." Min-jae had not moved. His right hand rested 1 inch from Allison's on the linen onyx signet, catching the low light. His eyes were on Vivian, and they held her the way a hand holds a wrist that is trying to pull away. "I judged your skin," Vivian said. She said it flat, the way a person reads a receipt. The couple in camel coats looked down at their plates and stayed there. The woman in the champagne dress put her fork down carefully so it made no sound. The bald man from Inchin Shipping folded his napkin a third time. "Louder," Allison said. "I judged your skin." Vivian's voice cracked at the edge. "I saw you, and I made a calculation. And the calculation was that a black woman in that dress in this room, at this table, meant one of two things, and neither of them was guessed." What were the two things? Vivian's throat worked. Escort or lost. Somewhere in the party of six, a fork touched a plate, and the sound was enormous. Elias's phone kept its small red dot alive against the leather binder. He had not blinked in a while. He kept the frame tight on Vivian's face, the ribbon of Ashford's shoulder in the corner, Allison's right hand at the edge. Min-jae spoke for the first time since Vivian had crossed the marble. "Was the calculation yours alone?" Vivian's eyes went to him. 11 years of reflex. 11 years of him being Mr. Kang, and her being the woman who ran his room. She saw for the first time tonight that he was not looking at her as an employer looks at an employee. He was looking at her the way a landlord looks at a fire. "No," she said. "Whose else?" "Halloran." The name landed on the marble and stayed there. Ashford's pen moved once. Allison did not turn her head. Min-jae's second hand came up onto the linen slowly. "Say more," Allison said. Vivian began to speak in the wrong direction and then corrected herself and faced the sala again. "The floor manager. Mr. Halloran. 6 months ago, a couple was seated by me at table 19 and asked to be moved because the man across from them was black. Halloran moved them. 2 months after that, a party of 4 was told there was no availability for 8:30. There was. Halloran told them to say it. A month ago, a black woman came in for a birthday dinner, and I was on shift and I was told," her voice caught, "I was told to keep her from the window tables. I did what I was told. Miss Reed, I did what I was told, and I also did what I already thought. You do not get to separate them for me tonight. I did both." Allison's palms flexed once on the linen and lay flat again. "Names," she said. "Of the guests?" "Of the guests you turned. Yes. Some are in a book, in the office, or Halloran keeps the book. It says staffing on the front." Ashford's pen moved a second time. He said quietly without looking up, "Custody." Min-jae answered without looking away from Vivian. 2 men from the door will hold the office. No one enters or leaves. Nothing is removed." He did not raise his voice. 2 of the men from the sidewalk were already inside the mouth of the room before the sentence finished. They did not walk fast. They walked the way water finds a slope. They passed behind Vivian without touching her, and one continued toward the corridor that led to the office, and the other stopped at the wall and became a piece of the wall. Vivian saw them in the reflection of the mirrored panel behind the host stand. Her shoulders came up 1/2 an inch and settled. "How many complaints reached the office in writing?" Allison said. "I don't know the exact number. Guess. 9, maybe 11. Where are they?" Halloran took them home. He said it was safer. The sala's air tightened another notch. The cellist held her arm still, bow across her knee. The pianist had put his hands on his thighs and left them there. Allison did not lean forward. She did not raise her chin. She kept the same posture her mother had taught her at the kitchen table in Convent Avenue, with a butter knife balanced on her head. 2 palms open, shoulders down, nothing in the face that would please a person who wanted to see her flinch. "Miss Marchetti," she said, "I want to say this once, and I want you to hear it clean." Vivian's eyes lifted. "You told me to enter through the servant's door because you judged my skin. You will now leave my restaurant through that same door." The room did not gasp. Something quieter happened. The room understood. Min Jae's mouth did a thing that was almost, but not quite, a smile. It did not touch his eyes. Allison turned her head 1 degree toward him. Fire her. Min Jae did not look at Vivian. He looked at the man against the wall who was no longer a piece of the wall. Miss Marchetti's employment with the house ends now. She will collect nothing from the office. Her locker will be inventoried and its contents delivered to her home address by the end of the week. She will be escorted through the service corridor to the alley and from the alley to the street. She will not speak to any member of the staff on the way. Is that understood? The man against the wall inclined his head 1/2 inch. Vivian opened her mouth and no sound came out. Min Jae finally looked at her. You did not speak in front of the room by choice. Do not try to speak in private now. She closed her mouth. She reached, out of habit, to smooth the pin over her chest and stopped her hand halfway. The pin caught the light for a second, a small gold rectangle with her name in engraved script. She unclipped it. She held it flat on her palm. Where do I put it? She asked, and the question was not sarcastic. It was practical. It was the question of a woman who had lived by procedure for 11 years and had 1 procedure left. Ashford reached into the pocket of his midnight navy jacket and produced a plain white envelope. He held it open across the linen. Vivian walked the 3 steps to the table 1 without being told, dropped the pin into the envelope, and stepped back to where she had been standing. Ashford sealed the flap with the flat of his thumb. You have a bag in the office, Allison said. You will not go get it. Elias will. Vivian's eyes cut to the host stand. Elias was already standing straighter, phone still recording against the binder. He did not look nervous. He looked like a man who had prepared for this, the way a person prepares for a fire drill they suspected would not be a drill. Yes, Miss Reed, he said, and the honorific came out clean. He set the phone on the binder, still filming, palm flat and tilted, so the frame would keep. He walked past Vivian without looking at her, and disappeared into the corridor. Min Jae addressed the man against the wall. When Mr. Park returns with the bag, Miss Marchetti goes. Vivian's chin lifted a 1/4 inch. It was not defiance. It was the last honest thing about her tonight. She looked at Allison, and Allison did not look away. Miss Reed, Vivian said, may I say one thing to you? No. The refusal was calm. Anything you have to say, Allison said, you say to the council. Mr. Ashford will take a statement. Anything you say that is not a statement is a favor to yourself, and I am not in the business of favors to you tonight. Vivian's jaw closed. She nodded once. Ashford spoke without looking at her. You will receive a letter by courier, tomorrow morning, listing the charges the house is pursuing, and the charges the ownership is pursuing separately. You will have 24 hours to secure counsel. You will not contact any current employee of any A and V property during that window or after. You will not contact Mr. Halloran. At the name, Vivian's face did a thing so small only the 2 men against the wall saw it. You already contacted him, Allison said. It was not a question. He called me, Vivian said, at 8:41, from a number I do not have saved. He told me to keep my mouth shut. He told me the house would take care of me. When you say the house, Min Jae said, you mean me. Vivian swallowed. That is who he means when he says the house. Yes. You believed him. I have believed him for 6 years. Ashford wrote a longer line this time. His pen scratched once, twice, and stopped. Elias came back through the corridor with a small charcoal handbag and a cream trench folded over his forearm. He walked to the space 6 feet behind Vivian and stopped, holding them out at arm's length, like objects that had never been his. Turn, Min Jae said. Vivian turned. She took the handbag by the strap. She let Elias drape the trench over her free arm. She did not put it on. The 2 men from the door moved into position, 1 at each of Vivian's shoulders. They did not take her arms. They stood a hand's width away, and the geometry of them was enough. "Where is the service door?" Allison said, to the sala, to no one, to everyone. Vivian's face lost the last of its color. She had spent 11 years pointing at that door. She had spent 1 hour and 11 minutes tonight pointing at that door. She lifted her hand now and pointed at it. The gesture was clean, the wrist was steady. She pointed at the small brass-handled door beside the coat check where she had told Allison to enter, and the sala watched her point. "Walk," Min-jae said. She walked. The two men walked with her. The heels made their sound across the marble, and there was no other sound in the sala for 8 full steps. She passed the coat check. She passed the small, unmarked door with the brass handle. One of the men opened it. He held it. She went through. The other man followed. The door swung on its silent hinge and clicked shut with the same small click Allison had heard from her mother's kitchen drawer at 10 years old. And the click landed in the middle of Allison's chest and stayed there. The sala breathed. The cellist did not lift her bow. The pianist did not touch a key. The party of 6 had not put a fork down. They had not lifted one either. The couple in camel coats was looking at the tablecloth. The bald man from Incheon Shipping had folded his napkin into a small tight square and set it on his plate, and now sat with both hands in his lap. Allison did not stand. She turned her head 1 degree back to Min-jae. His hand was still on the linen. His face had not moved through any of it, but his knuckles were white where they met the cloth. "You didn't know about the book," she said, low. "I did not. You didn't know about the 11 complaints?" "I did not. You knew about the 2 women who quit in 1 week." His jaw worked. "I knew a name. I did not know a number. I did not know a pattern. I chose not to know." "Why?" "Because I wanted a table with you, not an office with you." Allison let that sit on the linen a moment. "Ashford," quietly, without looking up from the binder, "the office is being sealed as we speak. Nothing leaves. I have counsel arriving within the hour to begin custody of documents. Mr. Halloran will be reached at his home. He will be told to remain there. If he does not remain there, a car will be sent. He will not enter this building again." Allison did not answer. She was looking at the door with the brass handle. Min-jae saw her looking. He said, "It stays." She looked at him. "The door," he said. "It is a service door. Real staff use it. Deliveries use it. Ice for the bar comes through it. It stays. We do not tear out doors to feel better about ourselves. We tear out the reason we let a maitre d' point at them." Allison held his eyes. "Good," she said. She looked at Elias. He was back at the host stand, phone still recording against the binder. He had picked it up long enough to walk Vivian's bag and set it down again in exactly the same tilt, in exactly the same place, and Allison noted the discipline of that gesture without commenting on it. "Mr. Park," she said, "come here." Elias set the phone flat on the binder, careful of the frame, and crossed to the table 1. He did not walk fast. He stopped exactly 1 pace back from the edge, the way a junior host was trained to stop. "Closer," she said. He took the pace. "How long have you worked in this house?" 4 months, Miss Reed." "How long have you been recording?" Elias's throat worked. The truth was already on the linen, and he chose to lay it there flat. 1 hour and 14 minutes. I began, when Miss Marchetti told me the guest at 8:30 was a walk-in, and to strike the reservation from the tablet. Min-jae's head turned 1/4 of an inch toward Elias. "You knew what she was doing," Allison said. "I did not know all of it. I knew it would matter later that I could show what she did without me having to be the one to say it. You could have been fired for that." "Yes." "You did it anyway." "Yes." Ashford wrote a short line and underlined it with a small movement of his wrist. Allison studied Elias for a long, slow beat. She saw the wire frame glasses, the earpiece coiled at the collar, the junior version of the house uniform. The hands that had not once tonight gone into a pocket. "Stay standing," she said. "Do not sit yet. There is still one thing to finish before you sit." Elias inclined his head. "Yes, Miss Reed." Allison turned back to the sala. She saw the 84 faces that had watched her be pointed at a servant's door, and now watched her sit at table 1 with the pen of the House Counsel moving quietly beside her. She saw the couple in camel coats, who had not been part of what happened, but had not been outside of it either. She saw the party of 6. She saw the bald man from Incheon shipping folding his napkin a 4th time. She saw 2 men in dark coats who had brought Vivienne out through a small brass-handled door, and who were now, without being asked, standing at the 2 ends of the sala like the punctuation of a sentence she had not finished writing yet. She placed both palms flat on the linen again. She felt the weight of the butter knife on her head at 10 years old. She felt the click of her mother's kitchen drawer. She felt the small pin of a gold rectangle sealed inside a plain white envelope in Ashford's inside pocket. She did not smile the practiced smile she had rehearsed at the mirror. She did not smile at all. "Teddy," she said, without turning her head, "how many of the 11 complaints do you think we will recover before morning?" "All of them," Ashford said. "The office is a 15 by 20 room, with 1 door and no window. If Mr. Halloran took them home, we will know by 9 which of them are still in his house. If he shredded them, we will have the counter records the guests filed through the diversity officer at the parent." There is a diversity officer at the parent. There is. Did she know? She knew of 2 of the 11. She was told the other 9 had been resolved at the house level. Fire her. Ashford's pen paused. He looked at Allison for the first time since he had opened the binder. "Miss Reed, fire her tonight, in writing, by courier, before midnight. I do not need her to know at what hour. I need her to know it was tonight. Understood?" Allison lifted her right hand off the linen. She did not raise it high. She lifted it just enough that Min-jae could see the tremor. She held it out to him, palm down, above the linen, between them. He did not take it. He put his own hand under it, palm up, and let her hand rest on his. The tremor stopped. The sala watched a Korean man in a charcoal suit hold up the hand of a young black woman at his own table in the room he no longer owned, and the sala did not know what to do with what it was watching, and Allison did not care what the sala did with it. She looked at the small brass-handled door one more time. Then she looked at Ashford's binder. Then she looked at Min-jae's face, and she saw, for the first time in 4 months, the whole of it, the quiet one, the boss, the man who had counted 10 steps across a marble floor because he did not trust his own legs to bring him to her. "Open the pasta," she said quietly to Ashford. "Read me the first page out loud, from the top. Slowly." Ashford lifted the file marked Read A. He opened it. He began to read. Ashford read slowly, the way a man reads who has been asked to make each word land alone. "To my daughter Allison Marie Reed, this document names you controlling holder of the parent entity of A and V Hospitality Group, effective the 3rd of February. It also names my one instruction to you. Choose the rooms you enter and the rooms you close. Then hold them open for the next woman." He set the page down at the edge of the table. He did not turn to the second page. Allison put a finger on the line that named her middle name, Marie, her grandmother's name. Nobody outside the family used it. The page had it in typed courier, first draft, the way her mother had always drafted first and never softened later. She let the finger stay there a long breath. Then she lifted her chin toward the room. 84 people were still not eating. The cellist had put the bow across her knees. Somewhere near the back, a spoon touched a saucer, and a woman quickly caught it with a napkin, as if the ring of the metal was a rudeness now. Allison stood. She did it without pushing her chair back hard. She stood the way a woman stands who has already decided how long she will speak. Min Jae stood a half beat after her, one step behind her right shoulder, matching her posture without crowding it. Ashford stayed at the edge of the table with the folder still in one hand. "My name is Allison Reed," she said. Her voice reached the far banquette without climbing. "Since February 3rd of this year, my mother's trust has held controlling interest in the parent company of this restaurant and 16 others. My mother died before she could tell me. Mr. Ashford told me tonight." She let that sit. "I am telling you now for 2 reasons. So no one in this room can say later that they did not know. And so the woman who was walked out that door tonight is not the last piece of business." The party of 6 did not move. The bald man from Incheon Shipping laid both hands flat on his own linen. It was, Min Jae thought, the posture Allison had used at the table. "Learned in 9 minutes. Allison went on. "Effective now, by my authority as majority holder and with the standing consent of House Council, this restaurant and every property under the parent will operate under the Anti-Discrimination Code drafted by that council in April and never posted. It will be posted at every host stand by tomorrow's dinner service. Every host, every server, every manager will sign it before their next shift. Anyone who refuses to sign is not employed by us." She did not raise her voice on any of it. "An external audit begins tonight. Mr. Ashford's firm will name the auditor before I sit back down. Its first file is the book that was kept in the office of this restaurant under the label staffing. Its second file is the personnel record of Mr. Halloran. Mr. Halloran is no longer floor manager of this house. He will be reached at his home within the hour. He will not enter this building again." A small movement at a 2-top near the window. A man in a charcoal blazer set his knife on the plate and folded his napkin into a neat square and set the napkin on the plate as well. The woman with him did not look up from her water glass. Ashford glanced once at them and made a small mark on the top sheet of his portfolio without turning his wrist. "Everyone in this room will finish their meal if they choose to," Allison said. "Or leave if they choose to. No one will be presented with a bill they did not order. That is the only apology this house owes you tonight. The rest is owed to people who are not in this room. We will find them." She sat. Min Jae remained standing 1 heartbeat longer, so that no one in the room could pretend she had spoken alone. Then he sat as well. The room breathed once, together. The cellist lifted the bow. She waited for a nod from no one, understood that the nod was not coming, and set the bow down again. The pianist did not begin a new phrase. The silence held, and it was, for the first time that night, a chosen silence. Ashford leaned a half-inch toward Allison. "Rosenthal and Bright," he said. "The auditor. I'll call from the hall. She'll be here within the hour." "Call from the table," Allison said. "The room can hear it." He inclined his head and took a phone from an inside pocket. He dialed a number he did not read. He spoke a name, a place, a time, and the word tonight 3 times. He said thank you, and put the phone face down beside the folder. Elias had not moved from his 1 step off the table. Allison turned to him. "Elias." "Ma'am." "Bring the phone, and the binder." He crossed the marble with the phone held flat in one palm, and the reservation binder held flat in the other, as if they were plates he had been told not to spill. He set both at the corner of the linen, beside the folder marked Read A. He stepped back. "Stand there," Allison said. "You still have not sat." "No, ma'am." Ashford opened the binder. The reservation card sat in its slot. The silver pen scratches across the surname were pale under the low light, but they were there, and they had the deliberate up and down of a hand that had tried and then thought better of trying again. Ashford lifted the card by its corners and slid it into a clear sleeve from inside his portfolio. He tapped the phone once, careful of the recording. 1 hour and 22 minutes, he said, reading the running time. Continuous, video and audio. Good, Allison said. She did not touch the phone. That stays with your firm tonight. Chain of custody from this table to Ms. Rosenthal's hand. Elias signs the transfer. Elias's chin dipped once. Elias, Allison said. Who hired you? Ms. Marchetti, ma'am. Through my aunt. Who confirmed you? Mr. Halloran. On paper. When you began recording tonight, did you believe your job was over? Yes, ma'am. It isn't. She looked at Min-jae and then back at Elias. You are, from this moment, assistant floor manager of this house. Provisionally, for 90 days, under a manager we will name tomorrow. Your salary doubles tonight. Your first task, beginning in the morning, is to reach every person in that book. In that order, personally. Mr. Ashford's firm will support you. You will not go alone to any meeting. Elias's shoulders did not straighten so much as unlock. The earpiece at his collar caught the light once as he swallowed. Yes, ma'am. Sit down, Elias. Not at this table, at table 11. Eat something. You have not eaten since your shift started. I'll wait until. Sit down. He walked to table 11, which was empty, and he sat, and he put both hands flat on the linen in a way he had not done before tonight and had, evidently, watched. A server appeared at his elbow within 7 seconds and did not ask, only set down water, bread, butter, and a small dish that had not been on the menu. It was, Min-jae saw, the pear. Pear, honey, salt, plated for one. His jaw moved once. He had ordered that dish months ago for a confession. The kitchen, having heard nothing else, had plated it anyway. Someone in the past had decided who deserved it. He did not correct them. Allison saw the plate too. She did not remark on it. She turned back to Ashford. Halloran. Ashford lifted the phone again. He dialed a different number. He said one sentence. Confirm the car is at Halloran's door. He listened. He said, keep it there. He does not move until counsel arrives. If he attempts to move, follow. He put the phone down again. Min-jae spoke, low, to the man against the wall who had not moved for 19 minutes. 2 more to the address. Quiet. No knock unless he opens the door himself. The man dipped his head and left through the service door. The brass handle did not clatter. Ashford turned the top page of his portfolio. The diversity officer, he said. Notice of termination has been drafted. Courier is standing at Miss Rosenthal's office. Delivery before midnight. Cause. Material misrepresentation and dereliction. Signature block waits for you. He set a single page in front of Allison. He handed her a pen from his inside pocket. Silver. But not the same silver as Vivienne's. Thicker, older, the barrel worn smooth at the grip. Allison read the page. She signed. She did not linger. She slid the page back. Send it, she said. Ashford lifted his phone a 3rd time. He said, send. He put the phone down for the last time and left it face down. Allison looked at Min-jae. He had been waiting for her to look at him. He reached into his inside pocket and withdrew a small folded square of paper. He did not unfold it. He placed it in the center of the linen between them, closer to her hand than to his. From Seoul, he said. 6 days ago, it confirms the legal architecture I built this winter, so that if you ever asked me what I did, I could hand you an answer instead of a story. I was going to give it to you over the dessert. I don't know if you want it now. Allison looked at the square. She did not pick it up. Not tonight, she said. Tomorrow, over coffee. Not the small table. No, he said. A bigger one. He left the paper where it lay. The room was, by now, moving again in a careful new way. The pianist had begun something quieter than the piece he had been playing before. The cellist had joined him at a half volume that was, Min-jae realized, the sound the room made when it agreed to be corrected. 3 tables had asked, without a wave and without eye contact, for their checks. The servers had brought them. No check bore a bill. Each said, at the bottom, in the same silver pen hand that had drawn the lines across Reed, one word, comped. Below it, in a different hand, Elias's, Min-jae understood, the word replaced, and a new number, 0. The three parties rose. They gathered their coats. They did not look at the table one. Two of them looked at the service door as they passed, then away. The third, a woman in a champagne dress, paused at the coat check and turned her face toward Allison for a half-second. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. She left through the front door, which the doorman held. Allison watched them go without watching them. It was, Min-jae thought, the same way her mother had watched a room in a photograph he had once been shown on Allison's phone, the eyes doing the work while the face did none of it. The dinner arrived, at last, in courses that had been held. They did not speak of Vivienne again at the table. They spoke of the pair, when it came a second time, plated for two. They spoke of the brownstone on Convent Avenue and the bay window that faced west. They spoke of the sister in Atlanta and the two nephews, and whether the older one was still afraid of thunder. Min-jae asked about the butterfly on her arm and whether the sister had used a good pen. Allison said the sister had used a very bad pen, and that one wing had come out larger than the other on purpose, and that the artist on 125th had honored the mistake. Min-jae said he had noticed the mistake the first night. He said he had wanted to ask that night and had not asked, and that he was glad he had waited to ask now. Ashford ate quietly at his own small table by the window, refusing, with a small gesture, to be moved elsewhere. Twice he looked up and made a note. Once he smiled, briefly, at nothing anyone could see. Ms. Rosenthal arrived at 9:41. She was a short woman in flats. She spoke to Ashford at the door for 2 minutes. She took the phone in its clear sleeve, and the reservation card in its clear sleeve, and the pear-stained corner of Elias's napkin, which he had signed across, and she left. She did not enter the dining room. At 10:12, a car came for Allison. Min-jae stood. He walked her out through the front door, not the service door, and stopped on the top step of the entrance. The 8 men on the sidewalk had halved to 4. The other 4, she understood without asking, were at Halloran's door and at the office and at the courier's route. He did not open the car door yet. "Home," he said. "Yours. Mine. I'll come by in the morning." "Come by tonight," she said. "Later, after the office is sealed. Sit on the stoop until I come down. I'll come down." He nodded. They did not kiss on the step. They did not need to. He handed her into the car and closed the door and stepped back and watched the car turn the corner before he turned back toward the house. At 11:40, at the brownstone on Convent Avenue, Allison opened the door in bare feet and a robe over the pink dress that she had not yet taken off, because taking it off had felt like ending something she wanted to end slowly. Min-jae was on the stoop. He had brought nothing. He did not stand. She sat beside him on the step. The street was empty. A cab passed at the far corner and did not stop. The stone was cold through the robe. "You pulled out my chair," she said, "before you knew who I was." He turned his head enough to look at her. "You refused my revenge," he said, "before you knew you had your own power." She let a small breath out through her nose. It was almost a laugh, and it was not one. "My mother said something to me once, about you, before she met you. Before she knew there was a you." "What did she say?" "She said, I want you to be a room I come back to." Allison looked at the sidewalk. "I thought she was talking about me, about who I was supposed to become." She was. I know that now. I think she was also, a little bit, describing what she wanted for me, in a person. He did not answer. She did not need him to. They sat on the step for a while longer. He did not come inside. She did not invite him, and he did not ask. At 12:17, he stood and touched 2 fingers to the back of her hand. the way he had touched 2 fingers to the linen beside her wrist earlier that evening, and he walked down the steps and got into the car that had been idling 1 block away with its lights off. She watched the car leave. She closed the door. She locked it. She went up the stairs to the mirror on the parlor floor. She stood in front of it. The pink dress caught the lamp. The gold bracelet, still on her wrist, caught it harder. On her upper arm, above the elbow, the butterfly held 1 wing wider than the other, the way her sister had drawn it on a napkin at 15. The lamp fell across the wider wing and made it, for a second, look right. She did not smile immediately. She stood there long enough that the smile, when it came, was hers alone, and small, and half, and did not ask permission from the mirror or from anyone else in the world. In the morning, at 6:40, the city desk of the paper her mother had read every morning for 30 years ran a short piece on page 11. 2 columns, no photograph. The headline was 1 line, plain type, no exclamation. Hospitality Group announces external audit, names new compliance chief. The piece did not name Allison. It named the parent. It named Rosenthal and Bright. It named an anti-discrimination code posted at every property overnight. It named the resignation of a diversity officer and the dismissal of a floor manager whose name it printed correctly. It named an assistant floor manager promoted at the flagship. The assistant was described as 23 years old and had, the piece said, been on the floor the previous evening. Allison read the piece standing at the parlor window with a cup of coffee cooling in her hand. She read it twice. She folded the paper along the natural crease and set it on the sill. She went back to the mirror. She unclasped the bracelet and set it on the vanity. She lifted her hair off her neck and let it fall again. She practiced no smile. She simply looked and let the woman in the glass look back, and this time neither of them looked away first. Downstairs, a car pulled up. It did not honk. It idled. She let it idle a moment longer. Then she took her clutch from the chair by the door, and she went down to meet the day her mother had bought her. She walked out through the front. She had never intended to use any other door. If you want to watch all the stories without any ads and also get access to bonus scenes, extended epilogues, and exclusive spicy chapters, head over to our Patreon. Scan the QR code on the screen. The link is in the description or in the pinned comment. See you there. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Has anyone ever pointed you toward a side door because of the color of your skin and expected you to walk through it quietly? When you finally had the power to answer back, did you use it to punish, or did you use it to change the house itself? And could you have loved a man like Kang Min-jae before you knew what his name really meant? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, silent power, and awakening, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.